Enduro bikes are made to cover a wide variety of terrain and uses, serving as the everyday driver for many consumers riding their local trail network and maybe some bike parks on the weekend, to attacking the gnarliest terrain at EDR World Cups under some of the best athletes in the world. We opted for bike park laps at Snow Summit in Big Bear Lake, California, to get our 6 long travel bikes as close to the limit as possible in a relatively controlled environment. Our test dives into the initial impressions of each bike, their on-trail performance, what we liked or didn't like, and what kind of rider we think each bike is for. We choose which bike we would take home if we could get one for free in the configuration we tested, and which bike we would buy with the ability to change frame size or any components. In this video, we'll be talking about the Trek Slash 99 XO Access T-Type, and it looks like a session. Well, kind of. Being released the day we arrived to our test session, the Slash was certainly a head-turner in the lift line. It's all new for 2023 and littered with Trek's latest tech. Now rolling on mixed wheels in its stock configuration with a handful of alternative configurations possible. Centered around a high pivot suspension design with 170mm of rear wheel travel, the new bike comes equipped with an upper idler, new lower ISCG mounted idler, leverage ratio flip chip in the lower shock mount, interchangeable lower shock mounts for running full 29 or mixed wheel setups, downtube storage, a one-piece barn stem along with a handy integrated tool inside of the steer tube to top everything off. The 6th generation Slash sees many changes from its predecessor, most notably a high pivot suspension design that increases rear wheel travel up to 170mm with a 170mm fork. We tested the 99 XO Access T-Type build, which retails for $9,499, including a RockShox Zeb Ultimate fork, new Vivid Ultimate rear shock, SRAM XO Access T-Type drivetrain, and a 170mm RockShox Reverb Access dropper post. Trek's own Race Shop limited one-piece bar stem combo was certainly a love-hate component, but the Bontrager Line 30 carbon wheels are a welcome touch and the lightest wheels set in the test. Trek chose to use a 19-tooth idler pulley to create a higher anti-squat value that would eliminate pedal bob from the rear suspension while remaining highly active over small bumps. The frame also features Trek's active braking pivot to keep rear suspension active under braking. The Slash landed in the middle of the road in terms of sizing with a 513mm reach and slack 63.3 degree head tube angle. 1311mm wheelbase with size-specific 439.2mm chainstay length made it the second longest bike in the test. While it was not the quickest climber, the 76.7 degree C-tube angle made for an efficient pedaling position when pointed uphill. This bike has just about every advance in mountain bike technology from the last 5 years rolled into one. With the exception of the headset cable routing everyone loves and ditching the knock block, are all these advances worth the wait, or is it all hype?
It's got a lot going on in the back, right? So you've got high pivot idler, you've got low idler, it's got the new transmission stuff. Yeah,
we got interchangeable lower shock mounts, we got adjustable head tube angles, we got ABP, got a front and
rear fender,
storage, integrated tool in the steer tube. Missing because he rattles a lot.
For the first half of the day, Johnny's just like, yeah, what's that noise? What's that noise?
I think this chain slot protector is pretty cool too, how it's kind of cupped. It's a really cool design that kind of eliminates that side-to-side movement too that would normally scuff up this or just create more noise.
Right?
Yeah.
You can see it's working. The derailleur isn't moving at all.
Yeah,
which is pretty cool.
Kind of pivoting around that lower puller.
Which is that's specifically what that's for, is MRP designed it for high pivot bikes, so the derailleur isn't. This might have been my favorite bike of the test. Or at least, if I were racing, I think this potentially would be the bike I would go the fastest on. It was immediately confidence inspiring for me. I feel like the rear suspension design worked really well, especially with the smaller wheel. I feel like I'm a tall enough guy, we all probably are, where a mullet setup is not necessary, unless you're riding a really tight track. But this, for being a mullet, didn't feel like the smaller wheel was hanging up at all. The rear end felt super planted. I think it's worth noting, again, sound like a broken record, bringing the bar height up. This guy is not quite what we're looking for. And especially on such a long reach bike, like if your bars are low, it feels like you're in plank position the whole time. So swapping that out right away, big deal. I think also, while we're on the components, I had to ride this seat slammed to feel really comfortable on it.
Same.
So I could not run this dropper. I love the look of the wireless kit, but for functionality purposes, I don't think that a 170 dropper is long enough for an XL bike. I also really like this fender. Not a lot of dirt in here. This doesn't seem like, for all the pivots that this bike has, this seems like it would be a really low maintenance bike. Another thing, 32 chainring.
Why?
I would love to see like even a 34 on the front of this for me. When you have this Axis rear derailleur and you have a 27.5 rear wheel, I could ride this with a 24, or sorry, with a 34, no problem, and climb steep fire roads.
They didn't do headset routing, which is really nice. It is an adjustable head tube angle, which is really nice.
Yeah.
You've got replaceable lower shock mount to go 29 or mixed wheel.
With different progression rates. The two shock positions are sort of roughly, like Trek would say, designed for less progressive for an air shock, which is inherently more progressive, and then more progressive for a coil shock, which is inherently more linear.
2 drop chains on a single run.
Yep, off, what was it, the bottom idler and the upper.
The upper,
idler.
yeah.
Two different instances.
2 different instances, same run, dropping the chain.
Well, just let me clarify for a second that dropping a chain twice is not sweet.
And really not acceptable for a bike that costs what this bike costs. That being said, I will say that this bike pedaled really well through the rough. Just really active suspension, under pedaling and braking, I think was like the really big thing for me that I noticed, that it was just like, wow, I don't feel my back end like skidding or chopping much at all.
Uninterrupted.
And especially coming off the Intense, which was our other mullet bike, I was expecting the mullet to feel a little more bouncing around than the 29er bikes, and that was totally not the case with this bike. It just felt super planted and fast. Maybe it's not the most agile pedaling bike if you're climbing single track. If you're a fire road climber,
It's great.
it's a sick bike. If you're going to be climbing technical single track, it's just not quite as lively as you want that rear end to feel. Sometimes you just like want to just unweight to just get that wheel up a tiny ledge. This feels like, oh, I might still keep that back wheel on the ground when I go to unweight up that ledge.
I think it's a bit of an illusion where that kind of chain tension creates a really rigid pedaling platform.
Right.
But if you were to like pedal kick and get up something,
Yes.
it would just squat and kind of sit through what you're, the way it feels while pedaling is very different off the pedals.
The only other thing I'd say is I felt a little bit of front tire push, and I think that was probably mostly due to the super short stem. We had a 35 on there because we were trying to recreate the bond tracker setup to be as close to the manufacturer's recommended. And I think if this were my personal bike, I would move to a 40 or a 42 or a 50 just to get like a little bit more weight on the front tire.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that was part of why I just couldn't figure out why on the first day it felt weird. But I think it was partially due to super short stem and a lower stack. I wasn't very familiar with that type of feeling. So.
And I think if you were on a steeper trail, you might not feel that push as much.
Because you just have all of your weight on your front tire all of the time.
Yeah. And so I think this bike was really designed for the steep rough stuff.
With rather impressive rear suspension performance and confidence-inspiring geometry, who is the Slash for?
Getting sick out there.
Just getting sick and twisted. I think it's a highly adaptable bike that is good for, wide variety of terrain as long as it's generally aggressive. Felt like it was kind of a little hard to generate speed, like pumping through stuff. But if you're generating speed pedaling, there's like zero drawback. Like it just seems to get up and go. Something really steep is where this bike would shine. With it being the mixed wheel setup and the high pivot, you kind of want to be rearward all the time, kind of swing off the back. And this bike would be insanely fun on like a steep rut track.
I think if I lived in Squamish, this is the bike I would get. If I was just smashing steep stuff all the time and needed to be able to like turn in tight spaces and all that stuff, I think it would be great. I want more time on the Vivid to figure out the spring rate or reducers or damping or something, because it just always was harsh a little bit. And that was I was really excited to try it and I wanted to like it, and I never got it where I wanted. So I think that's probably a fixable problem, but it wasn't just easily solved by turning knobs or playing with pressure. I think this would be a good Squamish cross-country bike. Like, this is the bike for everything.
One bike to do everything is in everything in Squamish and the Sea to Sky
corridor. Yeah.
I think this is for you if you like riding some of the gnarliest trails and you pedal to the top of them. It's kind of a bit dead on maybe the more light duty trails that you have to carry more speed on. It didn't feel quite as responsive. Maybe, you know, with how versatile this is, you get on a more wide open track, maybe you throw the 29er in the back, swap the settings, and it's a pretty versatile bike. I really liked it. The moment that I got into the steeps and the rough, it just felt like I could just let go of the brakes, look ahead, and just ride it out, which I really liked.
This is what that stem looks like to me, just like, just that.
To see how the rest of the test pool stacked up, check out the full Enduro bike test session video, or for more details on each specific bike, head over to vitalmtb.com.